Something in the sky. One day, Stanley was at the quayside at a small village, and fish were filled in his harbour yard vans, and workmen were using older equipment like cranes from the old days and the old years, and the work took a long time. "I'm going to be late for Neville," he said, "and he's not going to be impressed," he said, and with that, Stanley was rudely interrupted. "What? Ew," said Stanley. "What a pong." His driver and fireman laughed. And then after that, Stanley still has time to puff around the coastal track. But when he arrived there was a man waving a red flag. "What's happening now?" said Stanley. Stanley's driver asked the man. "My high tides are damaging the track," he said, "and there's danger on it." "We'll go and inspect," said the driver. And they did. "It will be dangerous for heavy engines like Neville the new engine," he said. It will be dangerous for heavy engines like Neville the new engine, he said. "I've got an idea." And so Stanley's driver and fireman put up a giant yellow sign and an electric wire and an electric fence and an electric lamp too, and it means warning. "Maybe we'll make it there when we get to the dock," said Stanley's driver. "We will be able to close the line." And so Stanley did. Stanley knows it was dangerous for heavy engines like Neville, but for tank engines like him, it's safe enough. Later that foggy night, there was Neville waiting for Stanley when Stanley arrived. Stanley finally arrived with Neville cross. "Oh," said Neville, "what a pong, and that smell is making me ill." "I can't help it," said Stanley. "It's the fish," he said, "and there's danger on the rails." "Huh," he said. "You'll be danger on the rails, Stanley," said Neville. "Now get on with it and shouldn't your trucks hitch to the goods train," he said. And that made Stanley cross. The driver and two firemen were still talking to the head manager, but while they were too busy talking, there was Neville pulling a long train called the Flying Kipper. Just then, Stanley's driver said this to the head manager, and with that the firemen said this to the driver and the head manager. "What route is Neville in now?" they said. "I know," said the head manager. "The coastal run is the quickest. But we've told you that's dangerous for a big engine like Neville." The yard manager quickly phoned them up. But Neville is already in a cloud of steam. There was the signal box, and raced past by it. There she was at the there she was at Boulder Mountain, and there she was at the same harbour, at the same small village where Stanley was on this morning. The signalman couldn't hear the warning. By the time he did, Neville was surrounded by the fog, and there it was running with dash, and it covered his eyes everywhere. I can't see, cried Neville, nor did his driver. When he could, it was too late, and he went in the water. At the next morning, while the high tide was high enough, Neville's tender was still damaged, and Neville had to be lowered into a boat, and the Fat Controller was very cross. Neville, he said, you're meant to be delivering the fish, not swim with them, he said. Engines don't go swimming. You should know that by now. Yes, sir, said Neville. I'm sorry, sir. Later, there was Neville, and Cranky was happy to see him again. My, Neville, he said. I think we'll have some fishy tales tonight, but take my advice, and you will have a long hose down. Puh, said Neville, and he had no idea that he was about to be interrupted by 3 children and a sailor telling them about fishes. Oh my goodness, said the 2 girls. They've caught 9,000 fishes and a black whale. That's not a whale, said the little boy. It's a monster. That made Neville very upset and annoyed, and those kids were really annoying him. Night came, and there was Neville back on the rails, and Stanley was ready to pick him up. Stanley felt sorry for Neville. Come on, Neville, he said. Let's go home, and you will have a nice wash down. And Neville had to agree. He smiled than ever. After when Neville had his nice hose down, he decided to say he was sorry to Stanley. Stanley, he said, I'm sorry I was rude to you. It was because I was impatiently and cross. That's why, he said. Oh, it's all right, said Stanley. But he and his friend can smell something in the sky. Can you smell a smell, said Stanley. What is it, said Neville. Fresh air. Oh, hooray, smiled Neville. So did Stanley as well.